Hello, and welcome back to another lesson that I am recording. I haven't recorded one in a while, so please go ahead and review the earlier two videos. The very first one is an introduction as to what sound is, and the second one is examples of sound and notes that you can find in nature and in music. So go ahead and check those out before you come here. So coming out of that and coming out of what sound is, we got into the discussion of the notes in Western music. So just let me go ahead and review that with you guys just really quickly here. So if you guys recall from the lesson a couple weeks ago, there are 7 notes in Western music theory: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, or La, Si, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol. And they keep repeating within each other until you physically can't hear them anymore. So I'll go ahead and write these down here. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And this is the American alphabetized, so most musicians in the US would use this when speaking English, and I think this is mostly like a general English thing, where if you speak English, you're going to use this. But if you happen to speak any other language that is a Romance language, you'll probably be more familiar with this, which is the solfege. So go ahead and say solfege. It's a nice, interesting word to say. So these are the 7 notes that we have in music. In between these notes, there are other notes that we can add and other sounds that we hear in between these. And that would be, this would be, between here is A sharp. That doesn't look too good. You've probably seen these in music before. So in between these, it's A sharp, B, this is C sharp, D sharp, none between there, and then there's this F sharp. So this is one way we can go about it, and then the other way is if we do it backwards. So if we go from G to F, it becomes G flat. E to D, E flat. D to C becomes D flat, and then B to A, B flat. So A flat and A sharp are the same thing, they just have 2 names for each other. D flat and C sharp are the same thing, 2 names for each other. E flat, D sharp, G flat, and F sharp. If you're going to the right, or if you're going up in music, you would use the sharps. If you're going to the left, aka you're going down, you would use the flats. So there's that distinction between them. So that's like the very, very bare minimum there that I went over, I think, in the last video. In the last video, I don't think I went over this, but I'll go ahead and just make a new page here. So sharp, right? If you speak Spanish, this is what it is. But a sharp raises a note 1/2 step. 1/2 step up. A flat, or a half step down, which is why when we're going down we use flats, and when we're going up we're using sharps, because it's all about direction. So for the solfege version, you would use the same thing. Instead, in sharp it would be sostenido, and then in the flats it would be bemol. So la sostenido, re sostenido, do sostenido, fa sostenido, sol bemol, mi bemol, re bemol, si bemol. Okay, it means it's flat. going this way. Sharps go this way. Okay, so there's some review there. Now I want to talk to you about octaves as well. So octaves. What are octaves? Octaves, this is getting into what we call intervals, which is intervals are just the space between the notes that we have with other notes in relationships. But to sum it down, octaves is the space between the same note that is lower and then the same note that is higher. It's a very, very, very poor way to explain it, but it's the best way that can cut through some people. So an example would be, let's say we have C, right? Let's say this is middle C, right? And then we play C4, right? That is an octave. So let me go ahead and pull that up for you. So this is C3, C4, same note, just at a different register. The C3 is lower, this one's higher. That's an octave. Now, this is not an octave. Playing this and going to this. That is not an octave. Sorry, that was my mistake. That's not an octave. That's not it. But this is an octave. It also works when you're going down. That's exactly what an octave is. You have a note that you start on, and then you play the same note 8 notes higher. Now, we can go ahead and kind of draw it out and do all the stuff and diagrams, but that's the best way I want to do it. I don't want to overwhelm whoever's listening to this. Now, octave. Same note, 8 notes apart. All right? Remember this. Now, semitone. We talked about this in the last one. Semitone are essentially these, right? These. F sharp, D sharp, C sharp, A sharp. Those are our semitones. Now, if we go up one, that's called going up a semitone, or a half step, aka half step. You can either go a half step up or a half step down. Same with octave. You can either go an octave up or an octave down. Octave up sounds like this. Octave down sounds like this. Semitone up sounds like this. aka going from Do to Do sostenido, or going to C to C sharp. Going a half step down sounds like this. It's also known as C to B, or Do a C. Another example. Let's say we go F, right? So is that a half step up or down? If you said up, you are correct, because you're going up. Now, what if we go this way? That would be a half step or semitone down, okay? That's essentially what I wanted to get to with here. Now, we know the notes, and we know what generally an octave and a semitone is. Now, how do we go about reading this music, and why should we even care about learning these registers? Well, let's say you're playing with a musician, right? And you tell them, can you play a G? And they play a G. And then you say, no, not that G, the other G. Well, there are a lot of other Gs, right? There's this one. Right? They're all Gs, they're all the same note, but how do we tell the difference between them, and how do we specify which one? Do you want me to play the lowest one, or do you want me to play the highest one? which G? Do you want me to play the one in the middle? The one second to last? Or the one that's first to the start? We specify octaves because we want to get rid of that confusion. Music wants to be specific, not because it wants to be hard.
I can show them if you ask again from your iPhone.
I don't know what she was saying. Music isn't supposed to be hard because it's supposed to be hard. It's hard because it wants to be specific. And we want to be specific as we can as musicians because we have a vision and we have an art and we want to be exact with what we want. We don't want to just have a general idea of what we want to do. We want to be specific with whatever the composer wants, whatever the musician wants to do. You know, we have to be able to give that correctly to the audiences and to respect to the composer. So that's why we use terms like octave up, octave down, semitone up, semitone down. So next time you're talking to a musician and you tell them, hey, go play a G, right? And they're like, which one? Just tell them, oh, 1 octave up. Is that the one you want? Or 2 octaves up. 3 octaves up. 4 octaves up. See? That cuts down through all of the...
do that if something is
That cuts through all of the specific things that we have wanted to cut out of. Alright. So, now we know why we use the terms octaves and semitones, right? Because we want to specify what we want to do. Now, how do we go about generally just using this stuff? So for the longest time since the beginning of music and the beginning of sound in general, we want to record things. Humans naturally want to record things because they want to remember, they want to pass things down, or they simply want to document. Documentation is very important. If you are a person in the medical field, like a nurse, medical assistant, physician, you know documentation is important. You want to make sure you write down everything the way it is. That way, if there's anything that happens, you have it documented right there and you know exactly what happened. Or if you're seeing a patient that's discharged from the hospital, you want to have those hospital documents and know exactly what went down, what time, yada yada.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
If you are let's say you're a cook, right? And you want to pass down a recipe to your grandchildren, you know, you're going to write down like 1 egg, 2 cups flour, and then like 3 something water, you know. You write things down so you can remember and pass it down. Even when we go to the grocery list, we go ahead and write down, get 2 cartons of eggs, 1 gallon of milk, a cup of passion fruit juice, you know, we write that down as to not remember and to collect things. Now, in English, right, we write things down, people read them. Okay, if you want to read a book, you read the book and it's written there by an author. If you are a scientist, you read a scientific journal and it has all the different scientists that it has and all the things that they do, right, where they went to school. And the research paper tells you exactly what it is. Okay, historians, they write down things that happen in history and they document it, and then a couple years from now, you know, we find those writings and we say this is what we can learn from the past. But what about music? You know, there's a lot of musicians out there that play music without reading music, so why should you go bother through reading music if there are so many great musicians that did it without reading music? Well, I do agree that there are a lot of great musicians that did not read music and ended up making really good progress in the music industry. A big example of that is the Beatles, if I remember correctly. They made really good music, although it's not my personal favorite. They have managed to make music without having to read music. And there's a lot of other musicians that are self-taught to this craft, right? And they are doing really well. Now, the only issue with that is if you want to write down one of your songs, right, and you have a very specific way of doing things and you don't know how to necessarily write it down, how would you do it? So, a lot of times, a lot of these self-taught musicians, you know, they have like something like this. C, B, and then let's say it's G7, right? they have lead sheets. Lead sheets are great. You can go ahead and read the chords and, you know, kind of deconstruct the piece and just focus on what it is. Although this is great, it ultimately fails in wanting to give specific things and specific notes that composers have in mind. Now, there's nothing wrong if you can't read music and you're a great musician, that's fine. But this course is intended for those who want to read music and want to eventually evolve their knowledge and maybe write their own composition, write their own song in the way they specifically want to write or read it. Music is the same way as it is baking, as it is in documentation. We write everything down as to show why it's important and because we want other people to play the songs we want to play. Now, enough with me rambling. How do we do this? How do we write down music and how do we write down sounds? If you started a sound diary, you probably wrote something down like leaves crumbling, chunk, 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 footsteps, plop, 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 or, knock, right? How do we put those sounds on a piece of paper? How do we know how to put things in here and a musician reads it and they're like, yeah, I know exactly what you want. So we do that by the use of sheet music. You have seen sheet music before many times. You have probably seen it in cartoons and movies, or you probably have seen it in a textbook if you were an old band student, or in some other form. So if you are unfamiliar with sheet music, this is what I got for you. Sheet music looks like this, right? It has dots and it has symbols and it has writing, and when you first start, you feel overwhelmed and you're like, why am I looking at this? Why is there a P there? Why is there this? The sheet music here, if we go to the start of it, let's say we go right here. Sheet music works, and it's been used for countless of centuries because it's very specific as to what it wants, and it tells you exactly how to do it. Just like a recipe, follow how it goes and you get what you get. It tells you how fast the piece is. It tells you how loud it is. It tells you what style it wants you to do it in. It tells you what the key signature is, how many sharps and flats you have. And it even tells you how loud to get and what specific notes you want to bring out. It tells you how it wants you to play something, whether this is slowly or fast. It even tells you how it wants your fingers to move on the keyboard. And even tells you little things, little details like hold this out, grow, get this loud, bring this specific note out, go here. It's very specific. And we're going to learn how to read that today. So, now that you have an idea as to why sheet music is important, I will go ahead and start off with the first thing to do. And those are ledger lines. Ledger lines are the lines that we write music in. So there are 4 lines and 1, 2, 3. Sorry. There's 5 lines and 4 spaces in sheet music that we use to write our notes. We can put a note on the line like this, or we can put a note in between the line and make it on the space like this. So those are the 2 options we have. With sheet music, the lower you write something, like let's say we go here, right? The lower that note is going to be. So let's take this example here and then this example here. 2 notes, right? This one's going to be low, this one's going to be higher. This one's going to have a lower frequency than this one. Now here, this one's gonna have, this note's gonna have a higher frequency than this one, but this one is lower than this one because it's a little higher up on the staff. So that's how we read sheet music. So we know how the distance between the notes work. Now, let's say you're playing a bass instrument, whether that is bass guitar, cello, trombone, tuba. If I'm missing any, just let me know. You've probably seen this symbol a lot. All right. This is called a bass clef, or an F clef. This clef is specifically used for players that use bass instruments, bass drum, cello, oh not bass drum, sorry, cello, bass guitar, trombone, tuba. We're gonna use this one. Why? Because those instruments are designed to play low notes. They're designed to play the bass notes. So we use this one, because if we use a different clef, they might not be able to reach those notes because their instrument isn't designed to go that high. The other clef we use is this one, and this is called treble clef, or the G clef. This clef is used by instruments that are that have a higher register to them. Violin, flute, saxophone, clarinet, piccolo. The piano uses it too. These instruments can reach higher notes, and which is why we use this one. Again, the reason why we have two different clefs is because there are two different instruments that have completely different registers. It's much like the male and the female voice. The male voice is going to be a lot deeper most of the time, and we can't really talk as high-pitched as a woman can. And a woman can't talk as really low as a man can. And when it comes to singing, you know, men can't reach all the high notes that a woman can because they're just built differently. Men can't reach those really high notes, but we can reach a lot of the lower notes. Women can reach a lot of the higher notes, but can't reach any of the low notes that a man can sing. Same thing with instruments. A flute can definitely reach the notes on here, but it can't capture the notes on here because it's too low for it. The flute was designed to play within a specific range that falls in here, hence it can't play here. That's why we use two different clefs in the system. There are instruments that use both of these at the same time. You probably noticed that in the sheet music I gave as an example, it has both of these on here. This is piano sheet music. The piano is a very complex instrument, but it's also a very diverse and has a big range in what you can do. In the piano, you have all the registers. You have the low and the high. The high is played by your right hand and the low is played with your left hand, which is why we are able to read both of these. And we read both of these at the same time. So the piano, the organ, and any orchestral score is going to have a lot more clefs, but we're going to get to that later on. Right now we will focus on these two. Now, if we go back to the ledger lines that we have, let me do them again. We have 5 lines and 4 spaces, like I said. Each one of these uses a different system of putting notes in the space or in the line. We're going to start with bass clef. Bass clef, and this is going to be poorly written, but I want you guys to really see what I'm trying to get at here. You have this here, okay? This space right here is going to be G. This is going to be B. This is D. This is F. This is A. All right, if you can't read those, this is sol, si, re, fa, la. Okay, these are the lines here. Si, sol, re, fa, la. Okay, those are the lines. Well, what about the spaces? The spaces are going to be the notes in between them. So what's between G and B? That's going to be A. What's between B and D? That's going to be C. What's between D and F? E. F and A? Well, that's going to be G, right? Or La, Do, Mi, Sol. So you're probably wondering, why are there 2 G's on here and why are there 2 A's? Remember what I said. The lower a note is on the scale here, the lower sounding it's going to sound. A note that's a higher on top of the line, it's going to sound higher. So essentially, this and this may be the same note, but this one's going to be a low A and this is going to be a high A. All right, so let me go ahead and play what I've written here for you. So starting at the low register, it's right here. It's a little hard to do that with looking over here and there, but you guys get the idea. You know, as we go here, right, it gets higher. Right, higher as we go up, lower as it gets down. Now, they won't actually write music like this. You guys saw dots on there, like I mentioned before. So go ahead and take a screenshot of this if you need to. If we erase this, right? And then let me just redo the lines here. If we make a dot here, that's G, A, and this is going to be B. B, C, D, E. And if we keep going up, you'll find F, G, A. So this is how you read bass clef. You have G, A, B, C, D, E. And as you notice, it's going up in this order. Kind of how we had earlier. So this is really good that we have this here. Now let's go ahead and look at treble clef and see how they write it, and then I will go back and review this with you, and then we might call it a day. So treble clef is this one right here. And well, it doesn't look like that. There we go. So it's gonna go 1, 2, 4, and then 5. All right, so this is gonna be E, G, B, D, F. It's gonna be F, A, C, E. All right. Very different from the bass clef, as you can see, but it's a very similar idea, and it's going to be the same idea with any clef that you read. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, perfect. Now, let me go ahead and play what I have here so you guys can visually sound that. Or, sorry, actually hear that. Okay, so you notice how much different that sounded from the treble clef, from the bass clef. The bass clef was all the way down here, but the treble clef is all the way up here. Like I said, instruments that play this have a higher register and they can reach those higher notes, so which is why we use it for this. Now, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, perfect. Now let me go ahead and just redo this drawing and show you how it looks like in actual music. So you have E, F, G, A, B, C, and I'll go up to there. E, F, G, A, B, C. Alright, so this is what it normally looks like when we write notes. And as you notice, it goes higher as you go to the right. Perfect. Now, how do I remember this stuff? Good question. For the lines in treble clef, every good boy does fine. And then spaces, you use this one. F-A-C-E. Face. F-A-C-E. Face. Every good boy does fine. Now, if you can't remember any of them, let's say you only know one of them, every good boy does fine, but you don't know the spaces, go ahead and underline every first letter of the note, right? E, G, B, D, F. And tell me what note is in between there. What's the note between E and G? Well, that's going to be F. Between G and B, well, that's going to be A. B, D, C, D, E, D, F, it's going to be E. Perfect. Now for bass clef, I'll just drag it down here again. For bass clef, it's going to be a little different. For spaces, go ahead and do this. Sorry, for lines. Every good boys do fine always. Now for space, it's gonna be ace and G. Ace, G. And just like before, if you only know one of them, what's between G and B? Well, that's gonna be A. What's between A and C and B? Go ahead and take a screenshot of this if you need to. And I'll go up here. So this is gonna be our intro to reading sheet music here. Next, we're gonna go over some more examples of reading, and I'll point out to you certain notes and different little symbols that are in there that can help you at least get started with reading. And with that, have a good rest of your day. Thank you.